So I went to Alexandria and it was Ramadan. And it was not a matter of intellectual proof. Because I was looking at that. I was looking at what are the intellectual proofs of Islam. So I was thinking, because I was exposed to them. Like, for example, there was a figure called Zakir Naik who I used to watch when I was younger. And he was a master of exhibiting the intellectual proof. What is the proof Islam is true? So he'd bring forward things like scientific things, which are mentioned in the Quran, which he would say that could never have been known at the time. And he'd give examples like, the Big Bang and the expansion universe and these kind of things. And that for me was okay, it was good. Like, how could the author of the Quran know this, the embryological stages of development of a human fetus? Which even to this day I find quite surprising, to be honest with you, because it's mentioned exactly how the fetus develops. And then, you have these people like Keith Moore and Canadian professors becoming Muslim because they feel like this knowledge could not have been achieved at the time. So there was stock intellectual proof, which I was exposed to as a youngster in my formative years. But then for me, it was actually a matter of going back to prostration. I prostrated and I said to God, guide me.
How can the socks have a purpose and I don't have no purpose? It just,
No, you're making sense, because I've just had a memory.
Yeah.
There's a guy I know who's a scientist who he works on human blood.
Okay.
And that's what made him religious.
Wow.
Yes. Which is so strange. I went,
yes.
You're a scientist, you're supposed to be at odds with religion. And
Exactly.
he went, when I looked at blood under a microscope, I seen a design.
Yes.
And my brain was like, there's a creator.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes,
that was it.
Exactly.
One of the best studies that's been done on this is one by Harvard University, which I think is the longest, in terms of a longitudinal study, the longest that ever been done. And it explored the question of what made people most satisfied. And its conclusion was, I think they had 1,000 people and they tracked them from the 1950s, 1940s, I'm not sure, but up until maybe 50 years, 60 years. And they kept asking them questions every year and so on. And then there was analysis, layered analysis over the decades. And their conclusion after all these years was that the number one thing that makes a person content is human relationships. Like, your relationship to your mother, your relationship to your father, your relationship to your children, your relationship to your cousins, your friends, and so on. We would add to that as Muslims your relationship with God. So it's actually not the pleasure-seeking behavior. Like, the best information that we have now from Western academia, I've just cited the Harvard thing, but there's also, Pew has done a study on who are the most happy people, most content people. And in fact, they saw that religious people were more content, according to Pew, than irreligious people. This is according to Pew in America, I think they've done. So there is ample evidence to suggest that let's call it a traditional life where you have family, where you're propagating your genetics, where you have children, where you have good relationships with your parents, where these old school values is exactly what the human beings need today.